Hello, hello, and welcome. Welcome to yours and mine, Cozy Corner. My name is Amanda, and on this channel, we talk about books, and more books. Okay, friends, so we have August wrap up. Now, you guys know from our previous videos that I have notes that I will be referring to. But for the month of August, I read a total of 6 books. The first book that I read was Cujo. Now, I won't go into details of that book because I did a deep dive video, which I will try and link below. Try and link below. So if you guys really want like a detailed review on Cujo, that will be hopefully linked below. Now, Cujo. So the first book I read was Cujo by Stephen King. I think most people have either read that book or have at least saw the movie. But just in case there's someone who has not heard anything about Cujo, I'm going to give you, like I said, a very brief synopsis of the book because I have a deep dive video of that. But Cujo is about 2 families and an almost 200-pound Saint Bernard dog that lives basically get intertwined with one another. The dog Cujo ends up, unfortunately, contracting rabies because he gets bitten by a bat. And you can imagine what happens with the almost 200-pound Saint Bernard after he has contracted rabies. Now, I think that is a wonderful book. I absolutely enjoyed reading that book. Now, in my opinion, the book really wasn't about Cujo. That wasn't the main character. Now, I did not read this book as a child. I read this book as an adult. I saw the movie. So going into reading it, I was thinking, oh, this book is going to be, majority about Cujo. No, Cujo, of course, played a part, but they talked about so many issues and topics in this book that I was really surprised. So I would definitely say that this book is an adult horror. And before reading this book, before reading any book that I recommend or that I talk about, I suggest that you check your triggers. If you are a person that, are triggered by things, please check your trigger because in this book, they hit on so many different topics. And again, I won't get into it because I've made a video about it, but it's definitely more than about Cujo the dog. So I think it's a really good book. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I definitely would recommend it as an adult horror book. Okay, so the second book that I read was The Fields, and the third book I read was Original Sins. This is a duology in the Riley Fisher series by Erin Young. Now, I gave both of these books a 3 out of 5 stars. They were good books. I have no issue with them. They were a good read. I enjoyed the characters. However, there was nothing like mind blowing about either of the books. If you have read thriller, mystery, crime books, then this, it hits all the regular points in there. It's just, nothing extraordinary. Now, if you're new to that genre, you might enjoy it. The book is, I don't want to say the pacing of the book is slow, but it definitely doesn't jump off the page. It's slow, but but not slow in a bad way. It's paced the way it should be. But again, it's if you read thriller mystery books, I don't think that you will find this book all that exciting. There's no huge plot twist that just knocks you off your feet or anything like that, or at least not in my opinion. And maybe it's because I read a lot of thriller books, not certain. But quick synopsis of the book. So the book starts off, it introduces us to Sergeant Riley Fisher. She has just been made head of investigations at the sheriff's office. And off the bat, we find a young lady dead in the cornfield. Turns out the lady who is dead in the cornfield happens to be the childhood friend of Sergeant Fisher. And to kind of make matters worse, the two of them share a dark history that Fisher thought she left behind, but you know, what you do in the dark, they say, will come to light, or what happens in the dark will come to light. But anyway, then it gets a little, a little more complicated because now we have victims popping up all over the place. Again, it's not a bad book. It's just it was just an okay read. Now, even though I did give both of the books a 3 out of 5 stars, I actually liked the second book better. And I've noticed that the last, maybe the last month or two, whatever the last couple of series that I read, I've actually liked the second book better than the first, which is usually not the case. But in this particular case, I'd say the second book is a little bit better. Now, I did enjoy the fact that the author discussed topics that are still relevant today. I can't remember when the book was actually published. It wasn't too long ago. Maybe it was like 2022. One may have been 2022 and the other may have been 2024. I don't know. Don't hold me to that. But the point is, it's actually relevant. And I enjoy the fact that the author didn't try to, browbeat us to death to make her point. I got the message that she was sending. I caught it. The point was home, and I didn't get browbeaten. So I really did enjoy that. Like I said, good book. I think you guys should check it out if you're into crime, mystery, thriller types of books. Okay, book number 4, The Seventh Veil of Salome by, and forgive me if I mispronounce her name, Silvia Moreno Garcia. So I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars. This is the second book that I read by this author. The first book I read by her was Mexican Gothic, which I loved that book. I gave that book a 5 out of 5. Now, when I read the synopsis for this book, honestly, I didn't think that I was going to love the book. I didn't go into it think, oh, I'm going to love this book. But I figure it still will be a good read because from reading the author previous book, I feel like she's a good writer. So, and when I feel like a writer is a good writer, it makes me want to read. I won't say all of their books, but definitely want to read more than one. So that's what I kept in mind when I started reading this book. Now, I did read this physical book and audio, and I will tell you, the physical book, it doesn't have chapter numbers. The chapters are named by the character that they're talking about in the book at the time. That became really difficult to keep up with. Wait a minute, which chapter am I on? Where am I at? So if you do, do tandem and you read, you read the physical book and listen to the audio, make certain that you try to keep up with where you're at because it can be really hard to find the chapters since they don't actually have numbers. Now, the synopsis for this book, it took place in 1950s Hollywood, okay? And again, I might mess up the name, but the character, Vera Laros, she is an unknown Mexican actress who ends up getting the lead role as Salome in this big budget Hollywood movie. Okay, now just like life, you're gonna have haters. You're gonna have haters in life. That's just the way it is. And in this book, a lady named Nancy Hartley is definitely that of a hater. She was a child actress and she did like a couple, things as, a young adult. I mean, she's still a young adult in the book, but, kind of like early adulthood. She did some other stuff too. But for the most part, her career just basically stalled. But in her mind, she should be this huge actress, and she should be, just the it girl. And when you have people who like believe that they're a star and they're not where they're supposed to, sometimes they're willing to do anything to get what they want. And in this case, this young lady was willing to do anything. Okay. I mean, anything. Now, again, this story wasn't anything that I was just like, oh my gosh, I have to read. But again, it was a good book. But what I have to say that the author did that I thought was just extraordinary. So you know how in some books you have two different timelines? So, like in this book, you could have like the 1950 settings and then you have the current setting. But that's not what it was. It was one setting in the 1950s. But the way the author wrote it, when Vera was actually in the movie acting as Salome, you actually thought that that's where you were as well. And I don't know if I'm explaining that in a way that makes sense, but you didn't feel like you had two divided timelines. You felt that you were there. Or at least I felt like I was there. I only remember that, oh, wait a minute, she's actually acting when the director, yelled cut or somebody, interrupt something on the set. Otherwise, I was there and I thought that's what we were talking about. I thought it was two different characters, and I just thought that was awesome that the writer was able to do that. That was pretty good. And like I said, overall, I think the book was good. She gave us the opportunity to really get to know the characters and form our opinions of them. So it's a good book, definitely different from Mexican Gothic. And there's something that I'm trying to work on. I'm trying to work on not comparing books, just not comparing books, because they're different books. They're different books, even if they're written by the same author, and each book should just be judged on its own. But sometimes it's a little hard to do that, but I'm going to work on that. So, good book, 3 out of 5 stars. Okay, book number 5, Evil in Me by Brom. I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. Okay, this is also the second book that I have read by Brom. The first book I read by him was The Lost God. And I tell you, The Lost God, oh my goodness, that was a 5 out of 5 for me too. I absolutely love this man's writing. Absolutely love it. Now, The Lost God is hands down one of my favorite books. It's going to be probably a book that I'm going to reread at least 100 times over. And as a matter of fact, so I think I read the book in like 2022, and it's on my list to reread this year. So at least by October, I will be reading that book again because it was just so good. And based upon that book, I just knew that I was going to enjoy anything else that I read by him. It's just some of those people that you just know, like I just know I'm going to enjoy their writing, and he's one of them. Now, as I said earlier, if you're a person that are triggered by things, please check the triggers of any and all books that I speak about. Because let me say this, I don't check triggers before I read a book because I'm not easily triggered by much of anything. So I can read any book, but I know that people like Brom, his books are dark. They're dark. The subject matter can be a challenge maybe for some people to read. It can be uncomfortable. So I don't want anybody to be uncomfortable. So please check the triggers in his books before you pick them up. Now, Brom is also an artist. So he has drawings, and I believe, I'm not 100% certain, but I believe that in each of his books, he has drawings. Well, at least he had them in this particular book and The Lost Gods. He has drawings that reflect the content of the book. So remember, the books, they're dark horror fantasy type of books. So the drawings are dark. Okay. I tried to actually, not tried, I showed my mom some of the artwork, and it was no, sir, no, ma'am. She ain't want no parts of it. I think she probably was trying to throw holy water at my book. So please, please, please make certain that you check those triggers, and check him out prior to, picking up his book to read them. But anyway, I think the artwork was absolutely stunning. I think that they match the content of his book. They're dead on. And I just think they're stunning. I keep in mind that, hey, I am looking at dark horror, fantasy types of books. So not really bothered by that. But anywho, again, I gave that a 5 out of 5. So this book, Evil in Me, it's about Ruby Tucker, who is an aspiring musician. She, like a lot of young adults, she has many issues going on. She lives in the small town that she can't wait to get out of. Her family is dysfunctional. She doesn't have a lot of friends. Her and her best friend, they had created a band, but then they end up falling out. So, that didn't quite work out for her. So the only friend that she currently has is an elderly, eccentric man who is into like these um, religious relics. Okay. And one day she's helping him, and she's helping him with these relics. And then a ring clamps down on her finger. And that ring that clamps down on her finger, basically, it possesses her. It possesses her with the spirit of a bloodthirsty demon. That's all I needed to, know to get started on the book. Now, with that being said, I ain't into I don't do spirits and witchcraft, and I don't do any of that stuff. You can't bring that stuff in the house or near me. But when it comes to a book, I enjoy the heck out of those things. So anyway, so she has this ring down there, and the only way to save her soul is basically to get like hundreds of people to chant the spell to set her free. Now, first of all, getting to the point where she actually knows what she needs to do is a bit of a challenge. And then once she found out what it is she needs to do, now that's a whole nother challenge that she has to figure out, like, how we're going to, get this, make this happen. So basically she has to end up figuring out, how she's going to get this man back together. And things, of course, does not go as planned. Really, really good book. I think you should check it out. I will recommend it to anyone who reads this type of book. 5 out of 5, Brom, Evil in Me. Okay, so last but not least, I have King of Ashes by S.A. Cosby. Now, I don't think that I'm going to say what I rated this book, because I have read enough of S.A. Cosby's book to rank them. And I think I want to do a video where I rank them. So I'll just leave off the ranking for now, because I really do think I want to make that video soon. So what is this book about? We are introduced to a man named Roman. He lives in Atlanta, and he's a wealthy financial advisor. And he basically was living his life up in Atlanta until he got a call and found out that his dad is in a coma after a hit and run accident. So he has to go back home to his town in Virginia. Now, I don't know if you all are used to reading S.A. Cosby's books, but if you are, you know that a lot, if not all, they all take place in some place in Virginia, because that's where he's from. So this is not surprising that, the setting is in Virginia as well. So anyway, he has to go back home, and his brother and his sister are there. And he finds out that his brother, Dante, is basically in debt to some ruthless criminal. Okay. So Roman's back. He's dealing with, his father being in the hospital, his brother being in debt, and he's just finding out that things aren't exactly what they seem. Now, meanwhile, while this is happening, just like any small town, there's always some sort of gossip or something that's going on. He has to also deal with the fact that it has been haunting him and his family for years, the disappearance of his mother. So his mother disappeared when they were teenagers, and then they've, kind of been, whispers here and there. So he got to deal with that while dealing with the issue with his father, dealing with the issue of his brother Dante and all the stuff that he done gotten into. And then their sister, basically, she ended up taking on a motherly role. So she took on a motherly role, and she is like the responsible one. And not to say that Roman isn't responsible, but the responsible one she stayed home. She took care of her family, and she helped her father because they own a crematory. So she stayed there, and pretty much her life was, around that crematory. Am I saying that right? I hope so. But anyway, that's where her life kind of consumed of. But she also is determined to find out, what happened to her mother. She wants to solve that too. So we got a lot of, different plots, happening here in the story. But it's really good. I really enjoyed it. And I almost said what the rating was, so I'm not going to do that. But it's a really good book. I think you guys should check it out. Okay, guys, so that is my August 2025 monthly wrap. So anyway, I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. Please, in the comment section, let me know what was your favorite book for the month of August. I think for me, I'm definitely going to go with Brom. And let me know, have any of you guys ever read any book by Brom and what you think about them? Anyway, I will see you guys next time. Bye.